Okay, guys, so here we are. This is part 2 of my health journey as of late. So like I said, we had basically stopped at July 11th, Friday, July 11th. I had just had the worst night ever in terms of the congestion. It was the worst it's ever been. I could not breathe. And I did not sleep at all. I had an emotional breakdown. I was a mess. And like I said, the only way I could get some sort of relief is to walk around my apartment. And I'm like, I can't walk around 24/7 just so that I could breathe. Like, this is ridiculous. So anyways, like I said, it was 4 o'clock in the morning. Alex woke up because he heard me crying. He calmed me down, and now I was more congested because I had been crying. And he's like, why don't you, just go outside for some fresh air? It was very hot and humid out, but I'm like, yeah, okay. So I went out into our driveway and was just walking around, calming down, and it helped clear things. But again, as soon as I came inside and sat down, I couldn't breathe. Like I said, during this whole time of dealing with this sinus infection or whatever the heck was going on, I was averaging anywhere from 0 to 3 hours of sleep per night, maybe sometimes 4 hours if I was lucky. So on that Friday, July 7th, I went and saw my family doctor. Thank God, once again, they were able to squeeze me in. And so I went to see him, and he sent me for more blood work. And then he started me on a 7-day course of another antibiotic. So now, okay, so initially he put me on a 5-day course of one antibiotic. I forget the name of it. Then I had a 10-day course of antibiotics that my rheumatologist put me on, and she had me on 2 different antibiotics at the same time for those 10 days. And those 2 antibiotics were completely different antibiotics than the one that my family doctor had me on. So now he's putting me on a 7-day course of another different antibiotic. So now I'm up to I've had 4 different antibiotics in my system. So he puts me on this 7-day course of antibiotic, and, again, and during this time I'm still doing the steroid spray twice a day. But I was so congested even that Friday night, I could not sleep at all again. It was another night of not sleeping. I maybe managed to fall asleep for an hour. Maybe. And that's a big maybe. And so I just kept obsessively checking for my blood work results online because I was really curious what's going on with this whole neutrophil count. And I don't remember at what time. I think it was in the wee hours of the morning. The results finally showed up online, and my jaw dropped when I saw my neutrophil count. It was 0. I now had 0 neutrophils in my body, meaning my body had absolutely no way to fight any bacterial or fungal infections on its own. So I was like, this is not good. This is scary now. 0.1 was bad enough. Now it's 0. What is happening? Why is this happening? And so even though I knew the results, I called my doctor's office the next day to ask if they had the results. I already knew them, but I just wanted to hear from my doctor. He calls and he tells me your neutrophils are at 0. I already knew that, but whatever. He confirmed it. And he's like, so, and I'm thinking like, so now what? But he really didn't have anything else to tell me. And in my mind, I'm like, shouldn't I be hospitalized at this point? Because I had been reading up about neutropenia and severely low neutrophil counts. And everything I was reading is that even when I was at 0.1, I should have been hospitalized. And I put in isolation because I'm at risk of catching anything, and a bacterial or a fungal infection could be deadly for me. Like, this is serious stuff. Why is no one, like, why did it seem like no one was doing anything about this? Like, there was no, the only thing that they were doing was pumping me with antibiotics, but I'm like, shouldn't they be, like, trying to figure out, like, why this is happening? Now, mind you, I'm going to back it up to when I was at the lupus clinic. My rheumatologist decided to refer me to a hematologist, which is a doctor that specializes in blood and blood disorders and things like that. So she wanted me to see the hematologist to try and figure out why my neutrophil count was low. But at that point, it was still at like 0.1. It wasn't 0 yet. And then a few days later, my family doctor followed up with me about my neutrophil count, saying he wanted me to see a hematologist, and he was about to refer me to one at Sunnybrook Hospital. And so initially I told him, no, you don't have to. My rheumatologist already referred me to one. But then I was like, wait a minute, I would actually prefer to go to the one at Sunnybrook if it's closer to me. So I contacted my rheumatologist and found out that the one she had referred me to was like all the way downtown. So I said, can we cancel that referral and I'll have my family doctor put through the referral to Sunnybrook Hospital because it's closer for me. It's easier for me to get to. So we did that. And so, at that point I already had, this is, what did I say? This was like July 11th. So by then, that referral had been put in almost 2 weeks. Like, we were coming up on 2 weeks since that referral had been put in. And I still had yet to receive an appointment with the hematologist, which I was getting pissed off about because I'm like, this should be urgent. Like, this should be urgent. I have no neutrophils. Like, this is dangerous. Why is, like, no one rushing? So anyways, again, like I said, like when my doctor called me on, that would have been July the 12th, to tell me that my neutrophils were now 0, he didn't really have much else to tell me. He was just like, stay on the antibiotic, hopefully you'll feel better. And then he's like, if you get fever, chills, shortness of breath, go right to the ER. That's what he told me. And I'm like, okay, like, what, like, should more be done right now? So, at that point, that day, even though it had only been a day since I started the new antibiotic, July 12th, my nose felt a little bit better. I had a little bit of relief. And so I started to have hope that, okay, this antibiotic's going to kick in a little bit quicker than the other one, and maybe we can finally kick this infection. But then the next day it was bad again. So at this point I decided to call off of work for the Monday and the Tuesday, because I just I just fessed up to the family and basically told them what I had been dealing with. The only thing that they knew was that I had a sinus infection I was dealing with, but they didn't know how bad things were. I was really trying to not let it show how exhausted I was. I was really trying to just act like everything was good. I was fine. I just told them that, initially when my congestion started, I thought it was allergies. So after the first weekend of it starting, I just came in saying, oh, I had a rough weekend with my allergies. I'm just kind of tired because I didn't sleep very well. And then as the week progressed and it got worse, and then I got on the antibiotic, then, I told them, oh, it turns out I have a sinus infection. Now I'm on antibiotics. And that was all that they knew. But I'm sure they could hear me blowing my nose like 100 times a day, and they could hear the congestion in my voice. But, you know, basically I was trying to nap when the baby napped if I could. But it was hard to sleep no matter what because I was so congested. So anyways, they didn't know how bad things were. So I finally explained to them what was going on. And I said, now my neutrophil, like I just explained to them, my neutrophils never did recover from the mono. And I said, now I have 0 neutrophils, and I'm a little bit concerned about what that means for me, like in terms of like being exposed to stuff. So I just said, I really am exhausted and I'm not feeling well at all. So I said, I think it's best for me to stay home Monday and Tuesday. And hopefully after I have a few days of the antibiotics in me, I'll be feeling better and I can come back on Wednesday. And maybe when I return on Wednesday, if you could have gloves, because I had read online, they said don't change babies' diapers unless necessary. And if you have to change a poopy diaper, wear gloves. So I asked them if they could have gloves for me to wear during diaper changes, and that I would be masking on the bus. And I was going to try to set up something where maybe I could have some family or friends drive me to and from work some days to try and avoid the transit and blah, blah, blah. So just kind of giving them the rundown, and they were super understanding. You know, they said that they actually had noticed, you know, that it had been a struggle for me to get back to baseline since the mono incident, but that they were so appreciative of me still showing up for the baby every day, and that they see how comfortable she is with me, and they don't take that for granted, and they just, you know, my health is very important. Take care of myself, get better. And I said, okay. And I said, I'm also going to get in touch with my rheumatologist on Monday to try and get some more guidance going forward with this. So I wrote an email to the lupus clinic on the Sunday night and just poured my heart out into it and said, look, I've had emotional breakdowns over the last few days. I'm exhausted. I cannot sleep because of this sinus stuff. I'm terrified to go out in public because I now have 0 neutrophils. Like, my rheumatologist wouldn't have known that because I just had the blood test done on the Friday. And I just said, like, I don't know what to do at this point. Please, I need some guidance on this. So first thing Monday morning, I think it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, my rheumatologist called. And she said, you know what? She says, after reviewing everything that you said in the email, everything that you're dealing with, and the fact that now that your neutrophils are 0, she goes, go to the ER. Go to the ER right now, because she says, I really feel like you need to be admitted into the hospital at this point. And that's what I was feeling too. Like, no one wants to obviously be admitted into the hospital. Like, that's the last thing I wanted, because I was so afraid of losing my job because I love this job so much. And I'm like, I haven't been with them for very long, and now I'm having to go to the hospital. But I felt like that's probably the best place. I needed to be in isolation. Like, that's what I was reading online. Like, everything online was saying I should be hospitalized. It's serious. So, Alex was at work. So, thank God for Paula, my friend Paula. She came and drove me to the ER. And then she couldn't stay, which is fine. But my mom met me there a little while after. So that was July the 13th. Okay. So let me look at my calendar. So that was July the 14th was the Monday. So thankfully you can check the emergency room wait times online before going. And initially at 9 a.m., the wait was only like 3 hours, which is actually really good. And I was like, oh crap, I gotta really hurry and get ready so that we can have like short wait times. So anyways, we went, it took me a bit to get ready because I had to eat something because I knew I wouldn't be able to eat once I was there. I had to pack up stuff because I had a feeling this time I was going to be admitted and that I probably needed some overnight stuff. So I had to pack up stuff and just make sure that I had all the medications. I had everything written down so that I had all the information in my head to tell them. I'm always very organized when I go to the ER because I don't want to like have things take longer than they need to. So anyway, so I think I got to the hospital around 11 a.m. maybe, or maybe it was like around 11:30, quarter to 12. And then my mom got there about 12:30, I think. So got into the ER, put a mask on because I didn't want to catch anything. And they took things seriously. I told them, my rheumatologist told me to come here. I have severe neutropenia. I have 0 neutrophils. And I have all these symptoms and things going on. So it was a long day. At that point when I got to the ER, the wait time before seeing a doctor was 4.5 hours, and it was accurate. It actually took 4.5 hours before I actually spoke to a doctor. And so anyways, they sent me for, did they do sinus x-ray at that point, or was it the next time I went in? I'm getting ahead of myself. No, they did do, yes. Okay, so they did do a CT scan of my head to look at my sinuses, and it did show that the right side of my sinuses was inflamed and swollen. So there was something going on there. They did a chest x-ray. Everything was clear. They ran tons of blood work again. I don't think I've ever had so much blood drawn in all of my life. I mean, it wasn't just your little vials of blood that they usually take. They took some of those, but they also had like bottles that were like when you go to the liquor store and you get like one of those little bottles of wine or like little bottle of alcohol or whatever. That's what they were. They were literal bottles of blood being taken from me. And it was insane. And they hooked me up to an IV in case they needed to give me antibiotics or fluids or whatever. I think in the end it ended up, I don't think they used the IV in the end. I don't think they gave me any medication through it. I think the only thing I maybe got at one point through the IV was Zoloft. No, not Zoloft. Zofran for nausea. But other than that, they never ended up using the IV during that hospital stay. But anyway, so like I said, we were basically in the ER all day on the Monday. Yeah, we were basically in that ER section. We saw the doctor. Like I said, they ran tests and everything. Finally, at 10 p.m. that night, so I was there from like just before 12 p.m. till 10 p.m. at night. They finally said, we are admitting you into the hospital. We have a bed for you upstairs. So they took us upstairs. And so Alex came to the ER in the evening after work. because actually at that point I already knew I was going to be admitted, but we were just waiting for a bed at that point. So my mom was still with me, but she left when Alex came after work. And he came with my pillow and some other things that I needed that I hadn't brought with me. So he came upstairs with me to the room, and I had a room, like I was in my own room by myself because I was on isolation. Everyone that came into my room had to gown up in masks, gowns, gloves, face shield, all the things. Partly for their protection because they didn't know if I had anything infectious, but mostly for my protection because of the neutropenia.
So this is where you walk into my room here. So you see there's a door here. There's some hooks to hang up stuff there. Actually, I was looking for hooks. I didn't realize they were there until now. There's like a sink area here, I guess, for the nurses if they need to wash up. Or they said there's a sign in here that anyone who comes to visit has to wash their hands before they come into here, because there's another door here. And then this is my room. It's not too bad. You know, nice bed. Fine. Definitely better than the one that I was in the transitional place the last time. And then there's like a little dresser. So I brought this blanket from the ER, but I don't think I even need it. It's too warm in here. And then a chair. And yeah. And then there's also a little closet. So I put some of my stuff in the closet here. And this is where the paper towel and garbage is. And then it's the bathroom. But oh my God, I gotta show you this. How disgusting is the shower? Look at this. There's like brown sludge in the drain. Ew. Like I was saying to Alex, I said, I hope I'm not here long enough to where I would have to take a shower, because there's no way I'm stepping foot in that. I'd be telling someone to come clean that shit. It's not very nice. So yeah, it's pretty good. And right now my nose is feeling pretty good right now. But again, I've been up and walking a lot. So we'll see what happens when I try to lay down and sleep. It would be nice if it would stay a little bit clearer tonight for me so that I could sleep.
So I was in this room by myself, and the first few days were hell because I still couldn't breathe, and they still weren't doing anything for that. And they actually had wanted me to stop taking the antibiotic that my family doctor had prescribed me on the Friday, but I chose to continue to take it without their knowledge because I had a feeling it was going to end up helping my sinuses like the previous antibiotic had. And I thought, since they're not giving me any other option to treat the congestion, and I desperately need to feel better and be able to breathe and sleep, I made the decision to keep taking the antibiotic. And I'm glad I did, because it did end up helping. And I did finally, I think it was on the third night or fourth night in the hospital, I was able to actually sleep. They gave me my sleeping pill, Zopiclone, and the congestion was better, so I actually was able to have a full night's sleep for once in like weeks, and it was amazing. And I would nap during the day if I could too, and just trying to catch up on sleep. So anyways, like I said, I went in on the 14th, and then on the 16th, which was the Wednesday, a dermatologist came in the evening to do a skin biopsy on me. I had a bump on my left thigh that, in my opinion, it was a folliculitis spot. So back in 2019, I was getting these random like red bumps on mostly my arms, sometimes on my stomach, and very rarely on my thighs. At the time, I had one on my stomach, and my rheumatologist wanted to rule out cutaneous lupus, because sometimes lupus can manifest with like skin lesions and stuff. So she wanted to make sure it wasn't a lupus thing. So she sent me to this dermatologist. They did a skin biopsy of the spot on my stomach, and it came back saying it was not lupus related. It was something called folliculitis. And I just was prescribed a cream that I could put on anytime these spots came up, and it was no big deal. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I just thought that's what this was on my thigh, but given the whole thing with my neutrophils and everything that was going on, they wanted to like see what this possibly was. And they didn't want to biopsy the one on my face just because they didn't want to have a scar on my face. So they decided to do the one on my thigh. Whoa. So they do it with a local anesthetic. I don't know why, but anytime I need to get a local anesthetic for anything, whether it be dental, these biopsy things, whatever, those needles effing hurt every time. But then obviously once the numbing gets in there and it's numb, you don't feel anything. But the dermatologist didn't wait long enough to let the freezing take effect. And she starts cutting and I could feel it. And I was like, no. That hurts. I can still feel that. So then she gave like another shot of the numbing, and then finally everything was fine. I didn't feel anything after that. And she just put 2 little stitches after and it was all good. I'm like, okay. Then the next morning she comes back. So this would be the Thursday morning, which would be the 17th, July 17th. She comes back in the morning and she says, we need to take a second biopsy from that spot. And I'm like, great. She goes, the reason we couldn't do it last night is because where we would have to send that particular sample was closed at the time and it has to be sent there like right away. I'm like, okay, great. So then she has to freeze it again. It hurt. And again, she didn't wait and it hurt. And so anyways, got that all over and done with. Bandage on, everything. Then that afternoon, so this was Thursday afternoon, July 17th, they decide to tell me that I am now going to be moved to a shared room. And that's because I guess they had ruled out infectious disease at that point for me. I think it was like my second day in the hospital. They had me do a stool sample to check for, I think they were checking for C. diff. And I'm guessing maybe it came back negative. Whatever, any tests that they were running for like super highly infectious things were coming back clear. So unfortunately, they needed the isolation room for other people that have to be isolated because they might be contagious. So they moved me to a shared room. And so it was me and one other person. There was a curtain dividing us, but we shared the bathroom, which was not great. I was freaking out a little bit about this because I was worried for my safety. And so I said, I would like to see my primary doctor. So like I had a team of doctors. I had infectious disease doctor, internal medicine doctor, hematologist, rheumatologist, dermatologist. They were trying to get me into an ears, nose, throat specialist on the Tuesday or Wednesday, I think it was. And the ENT finally got back to them and he looked at my CT scan and he said, there's nothing I can offer her. And that was when I had another emotional breakdown because I really wanted to see an ENT about the sinus stuff. And to hear that he wouldn't see me because he felt he didn't have anything to offer me was like, I felt gutted and I felt defeated. And I called my mom and I was bawling. And I was just beside myself because I felt like I was never going to get like this sinus stuff resolved. Because at that point it was still bad. But like I said, I think it was by the Thursday or the Friday, things were better because I kept taking that antibiotic. and I could breathe again, and I was able to sleep. So everything ended up okay in that sense. But yeah, so I wanted to see the internal medicine doctor, who was like my primary doctor under the team of doctors. And I just wanted reassurance from him that I was going to be safe in this shared room. And he just assured me that, like, the person next to me had been tested for things, like they had nothing contagious, nothing infectious. He's like, any patients that have something that's contagious are in isolation. They're not allowed out here with all these people. You're not going to come in contact with anyone like that. I'm like, okay, I hope you're right. Like, you know, so it did make me feel a little bit better, but it sucked not having like my own private room anymore. Because the private room had its own bathroom with a tub and a shower. And I was actually hoping to shower that day, but then they moved me. So then I was like, well, is there anywhere I can shower? And there was a shower room that I was allowed to go to and shower, thank God. So, in the meantime, one other thing I forgot to mention that I was also dealing with is, so remember how I said my congestion started to come back around July 5th? Well, at that same time on that weekend, I had woken up in the morning, and down here, this area right here, to touch it was painful. And I'm like, what's going on there? And at first I thought, am I getting a pimple there or something? And I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, there's nothing there. Why is it hurting there? So then I decided to open my lip here, and I had a canker sore forming in there. Now, something else I forgot to mention, back this up. So the same day that I started the 10-day course of antibiotic that my rheumatologist had put me on, the day before of me starting that 10-day course of the 2 antibiotics, I had mouth sores right up here in the corners of my cheeks. And I also had 2 canker type sores on the opening of my throat, which I've never had sores there before. So that was weird, but they didn't get bad. They only lasted maybe 4 days, and they went away. And I figured the antibiotic is what cleared them up, because I was reading with neutropenia, when you're severely neutropenic, sometimes your body can't even deal with the normal bacteria that's in everyone's mouth. Like, you know, everyone has bacteria in their mouth. Your immune system deals with it so you don't get sick. But if you are severely neutropenic, like just the own bacteria that you have in your body on a normal daily basis can cause problems. And so a real common symptom of neutropenia is mouth sores. But I figured, the antibiotic, I guess, cleared it up. Well, this time, each day, this mouth sore got bigger and bigger and bigger. And in the week leading up to me going back to my family doctor and getting that 7-day course of antibiotic, which then a few days after that, I end up in the hospital. So the week leading up to me going into the hospital, each day it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I actually took photos of it that I can show you, like the progression of this mouth sore. And it was horrible. And by the time I was in the hospital, it was so big and so painful, it was hard for me to eat. I was basically wanting to eat like soft stuff. Anything, like I was avoiding spicy stuff. I don't really like eating spicy stuff anyway, but I was avoiding anything acidic. I was avoiding, like pop, juices, certain fruits, tomato stuff. It was really hard to chew any food really, because it was so painful, because it kept rubbing on my tooth, and it was just extremely painful. So I wasn't even eating properly either at that point. I was barely eating. I barely had an appetite because it was too painful to eat with this sore. And the doctors, when they first saw this sore in my mouth, they were flabbergasted. They were like, we have never seen anything like this. It does not look like a typical canker sore, and it does not look like a typical lupus mouth sore. They had honestly never seen anything like it. They were taking pictures every day of it. They were like, this is something they've never encountered it. Like, a lot of the stuff that was happening to me, it seemed like a lot of the doctors had no clue what was going on. They'd never encountered this before. I am a medical mystery once again. So anyways, basically, like I said, I went into the hospital on July 14th. Now we're at July 17th. I moved to this shared room. I finally get to shower, which is nice.
Say hello.
Oh, were you filming?
I'm just making a video to show my mom in your room. And the bathroom in here doesn't have a shower, so I guess I'm gonna have to go to a different room for a shower. Blech. Pretty nice view.
Felt a lot better, and my sinuses were feeling better, so I was starting to be able to sleep better at night. They were giving me a sleeping pill every night to help me sleep. I was finally getting good sleep. And I can't remember what day they started me. It was either the 16th or the 17th of July that they started me on a daily injection. I can't pronounce the name of the medication, but it's basically something that stimulates your bone marrow to produce neutrophils. So it's a medication to try and get my neutrophil count to go up. So I think they gave me the injection 3 days in a row at 300 milligrams. And each day, every morning, a nurse was coming to take blood from me. Like, I was a human pincushion. I've never had so many needles in my life, because also every night they were injecting my stomach with a blood thinner since I wasn't up walking a lot. And so my stomach is full of bruises. I had a big bruise on my thigh because one night they decided to do it in my thigh instead of my stomach, and just like I've lost count of the amount of needles I've had over the last 3 weeks. But anyways, they were taking my blood every morning, and my neutrophils went up to 0.1, but they weren't budging. So then I think it was, so I think they maybe started me on the injection either on the 16th or the 17th. Maybe it was the 17th. I think they did 17th, 18th, 19th at the 300 milligram. And then on the Sunday, which was the 20th, they gave me a 480 milligram dose. And then the next day, my neutrophils were starting to finally go up. So then they didn't give me an injection on the Monday, which was the 21st. And on the Monday morning, I got a bone marrow biopsy done. And I was so nervous about it. First off, I was upset that the night prior, on the Sunday night, the nurse brought in to my room and sat it on the windowsill right beside my bed where I could see it, the bone marrow biopsy kit. And so I got to see how big this frickin' needle was that was going to be going into my bone and it terrified me, and I was stressed out. And so I'm reading online people's experiences with bone marrow biopsies. Thankfully, most of the experiences I read were actually not that bad, which started to make me feel a little bit better. But a lot of people were saying they were able to ask for sedation, which helped. And so I, that morning, asked, could I receive sedation? And they said, no, we don't usually do sedation for this procedure, but we can maybe give you, I don't know what they gave me. I don't know if it was like lorazepam or something. They gave me something to put under my tongue like a half hour before to help me relax. But I really didn't feel like it did anything. I was still stressed. I'm laying on my stomach because they're going in the hip bone back here. And I was gripping the hell out of my pillow. I was boiling hot, sweating, so stressed out. Thankfully, it really wasn't that bad. The worst of it was the freezing. They freeze the area really well first, and they did give it time to take effect. Then they start going in with the needle. I think they go in and they also freeze the surface of the bone, but they can't freeze the bone itself. So I really didn't feel much except for some pressure until they got to actually going into the bone. Then there was some pain, but I guess it wasn't as painful as I thought it was going to be. And whatever pain there was, it was brief. So it wasn't that bad, but I still wish I could have had sedation to where I didn't feel anything, but it is what it is. So anyways, this procedure took about 20 minutes or maybe a little bit longer. But it was stressful. It was not fun because they went in 3 different ways. They went in twice to actually draw out bone marrow samples. And then they also actually took a portion, like they actually took a bit of my bone out to test as well. Not fun. So that was the Monday, and once the freezing wore off, the pain was bad. It was painful to move. It was painful to get off the bed, to get back on the bed. It was extremely painful to walk. And at this point, they were saying I might be going home the next day, the Tuesday, which was the 22nd. And I said to my mom, I'm like, there's no way I can go back to work the next day. Like, if I'm out of here tomorrow, I don't think I can go back to work on Wednesday feeling like this. I am in too much pain. So I basically booked the rest of the week off of work. So now we're at 2 weeks off of work, you might as well say. But thankfully the family was like so understanding. I'm so grateful for them that they were able to work out. They have family nearby that can help out if needed, but they also both work from home, so they were able to manage with each other. But I still felt so bad for inconveniencing them, but they've been great. So I thought, so anyways, I was discharged around 4:30, 5 o'clock I think it was 5 p.m. I was discharged on the Tuesday, which was July 22nd. And we were discharged with the instructions for me to test my neutrophils weekly. Because the reason they decided to discharge me that day is because my neutrophils were up to 3.5, which is good. I'm in the normal range. So they said, go home. Before I get to going home, the mouth sore. I think it was on the Monday. Yeah, the Monday before they sent me home. The white membrane that you saw in the photos that was on my mouth sore was hanging by a thread because they had prescribed me a mouthwash for that like cancer patients use for mouth sores. And anyways, they were also giving me like a baking soda and water mouthwash 3 times a day. And I guess it was helping it slowly clear up. And so the white membrane was slowly coming off on its own, and it was hanging by a thread by the Monday, and it was in the way when I was trying to eat. Like, it kept getting caught in my teeth. It was just not comfortable, not good. So my primary doctor, the internal medicine doctor, he was looking at it and he's like, yeah, he was going to try to pull it off, and that was painful. I said, no, that really hurts. He goes, okay, hold on, I'll be right back. He left. He came back with this little kit that had like tweezers and scissors in it. It was like in a sterile thing, and he rips it open and he grabbed it with the tweezers and just snipped it right off. And I was like, thank you so much. This feels so much better. Now, it was a little sensitive because there was still the actual sore underneath, but after a couple of days, it was fine and it started to finally clear up. And right now, it's almost gone. There's just a little tiny little spot left, but it's not painful anymore, which is great. So I was like, thank you so much for cutting that off. I feel so much better. So anyways, when they sent me home on the Tuesday, this was getting better. Sinuses were still good. I was done the antibiotic. I was finished the antibiotic on the Thursday, and my sinuses were still good. So I'm like, this is good. I still had the nasal spray. And the instructions were, if I get fever, chills, body aches, shortness of breath, chest pains, blah, 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 to go back to the ER. And also to once a week do blood work. And if my neutrophil count is below 1.5, to give myself an injection of that booster for the neutrophils. So we went to the pharmacy in the hospital, and unfortunately they only had one injection in stock. They said your best bet would be to go to the Odette Cancer Pharmacy, but they're closed right now. They're just in a building beside the hospital, but they said they're closed right now. So they said, we can give you one injection that we have in stock. It's unfortunately the brand name. So with our insurance, we had to pay $84 for one needle. And I'm like, God, I hope that like the generic version is a lot cheaper, because like if I have to take a shot a week even, like that's going to add up quick. But we got that one injection and headed home. And I slept so nice in my bed that night. It was great. And the Wednesday, I slept in. But when I woke up that morning, I had a bad headache. And for all of Wednesday, I had this headache. And my jaw started to hurt. And my eyes, from the moment I woke up, my eyes felt really weird. I felt pressure around them and behind them. It almost felt like I had been crying a lot and my eyes were puffy, but I hadn't been. I was happy to be home. I just felt weird the whole day. And in the later part of the afternoon, I started getting this thing where when I would take a deep breath in, I would feel this weird sensation, almost like a chest pain that would go up to about here, and then it would leave my throat with a tickle and I would cough. And I'm like, this is weird. So this is like the July 23rd. And then Alex went to bed around 9:30. He always goes to bed early. I stay up later. I'm watching TV and my throat started to hurt. I'm like, okay, what is going on? So I thought, before I go to bed, I'm going to make myself a throat coat tea and just do different things like for my sinuses, throat, whatever, before I go to bed. So now it's about midnight. I was about to go to bed I had finished having my tea and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, I just, like, first, also I had been very exhausted the whole day. I mean, really exhausted. Given that I had gone to bed early the night before and slept in. Like, I had, like, over 10 hours of sleep. I was exhausted. I felt really weird. I started to get chills and body aches. And I'm like, what the hell? Checked my temperature. At first there was no fever. I'm like, okay. So now I'm deciding I'm just going to lay on the couch here and try to sleep because I was, like, I didn't want to disturb Alex. So I'm out here and I got the blanket on and I'm freezing and I'm, shivering. And every half hour I was monitoring my temperature, and then my temperature started to go up. And so I sort of like nodded off. I was falling asleep here and there, and then I would wake up, check my temperature, go back to sleep. Around 3 a.m., my temperature was 100.6. So now I'm like, oh shit, I have a fever. I've got body aches. I've got chills. Fuck. I think I'm supposed to be going back to the ER. And I'm like, oh God, I don't want to go back. I've literally been home for 1 day. 1 day. And so I'm just sitting out here trying to figure out, what do we do? Do we go to the ER? Should I wait and see if the fever goes away and I start to feel better? Like, am I jumping the gun? What do we do? So again, I kept nodding off. Every half hour I would sort of wake up, recheck my temperature, still had a fever. So about 4 a.m., I decide I'm just going to go to bed. I'm going to go lay down in bed and see if I can get some sleep. And then when I wake up, see if I feel better. Like, I don't know. So I go to the bedroom, I go into bed, and I'm laying there, and I am trying to fall asleep, but I am just not feeling well at all. And I check my temperature again, and I still have a fever. It had gone down a little bit, but it was still a fever. And I'm just laying there, and I'm like, this is not good. This is not good. And then I guess, I don't know, maybe I had been sighing or something. I don't know what. Something woke up Alex, and he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, not really. So then I proceed to tell him what I had been feeling and that I had a fever. And he's like, oh God, like. And so both of us were debating, like, do we wait this out a little bit, see if I get better? Or do we just go to the ER like they had told us to? And ultimately, we decided, you know what, we should probably just get up, get ready, and go to the ER. As much as we hated the idea of it, I was like, well, maybe since I've only been home for a day, we won't have to wait long. Like, maybe they'll just take me right in. Like, I don't know. So, as I'm getting dressed, my left ankle starts itching, and I look down, and there's a rash developing on my ankle. I'm like, that's new. Where did that come from? When did that start? Like, and it was really itchy. And Alex is looking at it, and at this point, it was just like a pinkish, blotchy sort of rash, like almost hive, like a hive type thing. And I'm like, what the hell is this now? And so he's like, yeah, I think we really should be going to the ER. So we head to the ER. We got to the ER, I think it was around 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m. And the site was saying it was about a 4.5 hour wait to see a doctor. But I'm like, hopefully it'll be less for me because I literally was just home for a day. So we get in there, and thank God we were right. After I saw the triage nurse, and she looked over and realized, like, yeah, you literally have only been home for a day. And given the circumstances with the neutropenia and everything I had been through and the symptoms I was having, and I still had the fever, she's like, okay, we are going to be admitting you, like, immediately. You just have to wait to go through registration. Once you go through registration, we'll be admitting you. So I didn't have to wait too long to be called for registration. So registration took me in, got my hospital bracelet put on, and then I had to go back to the triage nurse to get blood work and an IV put in. And I didn't realize that, I thought she was doing the blood work first and that the IV was going to come after that. But she actually put the IV in first and drew blood through the IV all at once. And I wish I had known she was going to do that, because I prefer to have the IV in my hand, but she put it in this area. So I wasn't thrilled about that. But the funny part is that I didn't feel anything. It's very rare that I don't feel blood test, or especially an IV. I didn't feel anything. So, and I didn't even realize until I looked that she had put the IV in. So I was fine, but before she had called me in to do this, I was feeling nauseous all of a sudden when I was waiting. And so when I came to sit down before she did this, I told her I was feeling nauseous. Could I get something for the nausea? And she said, sure, we'll get you something. Don't worry. Let me just do this blood work and IV and whatever. And like I said, I didn't know she was going to do it all at the same time. So I never look because I get queasy with stuff like that. But I'm pretty much used to blood work now. So it wasn't, and I didn't feel it. But for whatever reason, all of a sudden after she did that, even though I didn't feel it and didn't realize until I looked that I had an IV in, I started to feel lightheaded, like I was going to pass out. And so now I'm sitting there, I'm like, I don't feel good. I feel really nauseous, and I feel like I'm going to pass out. And my instinct whenever I'm going to feel like I'm going to pass out is, I've always heard, put your head down between your legs to get the blood into your head. And she's like, no, don't lean forward. We don't want you to fall. She's like, lean backwards in the chair. So I'm there trying not to pass out, and I'm feeling sick. I'm like, please get me something for nausea. I feel so sick. And so she's like, okay, just lay there, lay back in the chair, just relax. And she's like, once you start to feel better, then we're taking you directly to a room, but it was more like a cubicle in another section of the ER. She's like, we're admitting you right away. We're going to get you into a room with a bed, and you can just lay down there and relax. So we did that. So then I was in a cubicle. Sorry, guys, my nose is itchy today. Ugh. So got in there, and they immediately decided to put me on an IV antibiotic. And I don't know who decided to put me on this particular combo of 2 antibiotics, because one of the 2 was from the penicillin family. And I didn't know that until I found out the name of what they had put me on, and I Googled it. And I'm like, they're giving me something from the penicillin family. I am allergic to penicillins. What the fuck? Did no one look at my allergies here? So I was a little stressed about that. And then they also gave me fluids because they were worried about me being dehydrated and such. So I was in this blue zone area, which we've never been in before in the ER, because usually they take you to the orange zone where you have to wait for hours to get into a cubicle and see a doctor. But this time I was taken to the blue zone where you automatically get a cubicle. And you wait to see, well, you don't really wait to see a doctor. I kind of saw a doctor almost immediately. And I think we were in that cubicle about a half hour, maybe an hour. And then my primary doctor from internal medicine came down to see me. He goes, I was just upstairs. He goes, I'm not actually on duty with your area right now. But he said, I heard your name mentioned from the other doctors that are kind of looking after me. And he's like, I realized, oh shit, you're back you're back. So that was really nice that he came down to see me. And so he said, I'm so sorry that this has happened and that you've had to come back. But he's like, don't worry, we've got you admitted right away. We're going to take care of you. We're going to get things sorted out. He was a fantastic doctor. I really liked him. So I felt better. So I just was laying there getting the IV stuff going in. And then I don't know how long I was in that area, but they ended up, Alex ended up going home because now that I was officially admitted, there were things that I needed him to get from home. We didn't want to take too much time packing up stuff, assuming that I was going to go back into hospital for a few days. I was hoping it was going to be something simple and I could go back home. I didn't want to have to lug all this stuff to the ER if we didn't need it. So I needed my pillow, I needed pajamas, I needed underwear, I needed all this stuff. So I sent him home. I said, go home, because he had to do laundry. Like, I was running out of underwear and pajamas and stuff. So I said, just go home, wash up a load of, like, my underwear and pajamas, and get, he still had the list from the last time I was in the hospital of what I needed. And so he got all the stuff together. And I said, honestly, you don't even have to bring it all today. You can always bring the rest tomorrow. But just, like, this is the main stuff I want for tonight. But I said also, like, don't bring it to the hospital until I know I'm getting a room. So while he was gone, I don't know how many hours I spent in the blue zone, that then they moved me to the purple zone, which was another area in the ER department. And then there I was in my own little room. Not like divided by a curtain, like an actual room with a bed, but it was like a gurney, basically. It was not very comfortable at all. The IV that was in here was not comfortable at all. So I was there, and backing up before they moved me there when I was in the blue zone, that rash that was on my ankle started to spread up my legs, up to my thighs. Then by the time I was in the purple zone, it was spreading up onto this area, my butt cheek area. I also had a spot on my face here. And so we're literally watching this rash spread as the hours went on. And it became like a purple color, like it looked like bruising. And I was, at first I thought, I don't know, I was having some kind of allergic reaction or something. But then it got to the point where I was like, no, this does not look like, I've had allergic reaction rashes. This does not look, that doesn't look like that. So as I'm in the purple zone, my internal medicine doctor comes back to see me. And like I said, he wasn't even on duty for me that day, but he's just an amazing doctor who cares. And he wanted to check on me. So he came down to check on me. And then I told him about this rash that had been developing. And he's like, what rash? And I show him, and he's like, oh. He's like, thank you for showing me that. He's like, that does not look like an allergic reaction. I have an idea what it might be, but I'll be back. So he left, and he came back with the other doctor that he was working together with the last time I was in the hospital. And he brings him down, and he's like, can you show him the rash? And I do. And the doctor's like, oh yeah. He's like, that definitely looks like vasculitis. And I'm like, what the frig is vasculitis, right? I'm like, I don't know what that is. So anyways, the main doctor that I liked so much, who was so good, he's like, thank you so much for showing us this rash. He's like, you did the right thing by coming in. He's like, we're going to get to the bottom of this. Don't worry, you're in good hands. We're going to figure this out. So they leave. And so, of course, I'm like, Google, what the hell is vasculitis? Come to find out, it is when your immune system attacks the blood cells in your body, or the blood vessels in your body, and causes bleeding under the skin. And I'm like, okay. And they're saying it can be caused sometimes by medications, sometimes it can be caused by infections, and sometimes it can be caused by autoimmune conditions such as lupus. And then a light bulb went off in my head, because for the last few years, I have noticed on my blood work from the lupus clinic a particular test that has always come back saying abnormal. And I was curious because my rheumatologist never mentioned anything to me about it, but I Googled what that test meant. And I actually knew already, like, I was predisposed. I have an antibody in my body that had the potential to cause vasculitis. And I have tested positive for that over the last few years, like 2024, 2023, 2022, I think even in 2021. Like, it's like they test it once a year at the lupus clinic, and every year it's come back like abnormal. So in my mind now, I'm thinking maybe this is all autoimmune. Maybe this is all connected to lupus. Or maybe connected to the mono, because I read that the Epstein-Barr virus can trigger autoimmune conditions, including lupus. So now I'm starting to think to myself, like, I wonder if this is like autoimmune stuff, or like, do I have an infection, or like, what's going on? So finally, by 10 p.m. that evening, they took me back upstairs to the same unit I was in 2 days prior. And as they wheel me into this area, I see the nurses at the nurses station, and I recognized there was about 3 or 4 nurses there that had dealt with me in the previous hospital stay. And they all saw me and they were like, hi. And I was like, I'm back. Like, what do you do? Like, I don't know. Like, I just am that type that, like, if you don't laugh, you'll cry. And I just was kind of like, here I am. I've returned. We just kind of laughed. And then the nurse that I had that evening, like, I think she was the nurse I had the first night I was in the previous stay. She's a very nice nurse. I liked her a lot. So I had her that night, and she's like, I can't believe you're back. And I'm like, I know. So that starts my second hospital stay. Although I almost, in my mind, feel like it was one long hospital stay, because I was literally home for 1 day. 1 day! 1 day and a portion of an evening. So, this video again, we're at over an hour again. I'm going to stop here, and we will do a part 3 of the second hospital stay.